Well, good morning, everybody. It is January 5th, 2021. Today's show is going to be just kind of an old fashioned, nonstop um, bitching and moaning rant. I don't know what else to call it. Part of what we're going to be doing here throughout the next 4 years or 8 years or 20 years or whatever it takes is trying to figure out a way to get through the tough times and I'm sure this has happened to everybody several times in the last 8 weeks, but yesterday, I have to tell you, I just didn't know if I could take it anymore. I was just about to go out to the supermarket with my wife. I sat down and just glanced at an article from Reuters talking about little things like I was about the Trump rally tomorrow as we record this on January 6th. Which will be the day that Congress will certify or not certify the votes. And the Reuters article said Donald Trump claims without any evidence that there was massive voter fraud. And that sentence just started me on my little journey through the walls of despair yesterday. This is not your job to make those kind of statements, but those days of the press being unbiased are way behind us. And just to make a long story short here, I have to tell you, the thing that I think that struck me the most yesterday was if somebody came into my house and stole everything that I owned, and then disappeared, I'd be furious and I'd be heartbroken and I would be all of those things. I'd be filled with rage. I'd want to catch him. I'd want revenge. I'd want justice. But they would steal the stuff and then they'd be gone. And I was sitting there yesterday realizing that the hardest part of this for me is watching them steal this, commit this crime, and then realizing that I'm going to have to look at them. It's like somebody stole everything out of my house, ruined my life, did everything they possibly could to destroy everything I believed in, and then they're going to come by every day for lunch, and I'm going to have to serve it to them. And I don't know, honestly, what the point of this particular episode is, other than to say that there are times when this whole thing is just simply unbearable. This is not a political loss. This isn't, Donald Trump should have won. This is something completely different. This just fills me with a constant burning outrage, and I don't know what to do with it. That's the honest truth. It's not crippling me. It's certainly not stopping me from showing up for work, and it's not going to do anything other than drive us forward to get some justice here. But there are times when I see these smirking, shameless, elitist swine basically gloating about all this and then telling us that we should have, it's time for unity and then talking about sedition because of I saw yet another unimpeachable entire argument of evidence about what actually happened on November 3rd in this country. And I think of all of the things that just set me off yesterday, of all of it, and there are days when it's simply beyond my ability to control. That's when it becomes unbearable. Was listening to these people who had stolen the election say, oh, no, Joe Biden will prevail. Our Constitution will prevail. And I it's a harsh term, but I can't think of anything better. I might have mentioned this once before. When I was working at the Miami Planetarium for Jack Horkheimer, who you may know as Stargazer if you're old enough, he was a real genuine genius and a tough guy to work with, but he was a genuine genius. And he did these amazing planetarium shows. And just as part of the policy at the planetarium, we had to translate those into Spanish and put a Spanish version of those shows out. Jack put an enormous amount of care into every single word, the nuance, the timing, and the music. He was a genuine artistic genius in that regard. And when the Spanish versions came along, it wasn't that they were being translated into a different language. You could make the case that a good translation and a good read into another language make it even more impressive. But the Spanish translation show was always just kind of slapped together. And when he would come in and watch it, and all of the nuance that he'd put into there, drove him out of his tree. And he said something once live in front of all of the whole staff of 4 or 5 of us. And he said, watching these shows is like holding a man's coat while he molests your child. And that's a pretty aggressive thing to say and kind of an obnoxious thing to say to my audience here. But I have to tell you, guys, there are times, and this is exactly what watching this feels like. It's like I not only have to have this taken from me and stolen from me, and I have to endure all of this. I have to watch it, and I have to see these faces every single day, and I have to see the smirks on their faces in this sense that they think they got away with it. And maybe they did. And that's the part that's even most unbearable to me, is maybe they did. Maybe they did get away with it. I saw in that article, they were talking about, well, the Proud Boys are going to be there, and honest truth is, I don't know much about the Proud Boys. All I know about the Proud Boys really is after watching any number of Trump supporters getting beaten up by Antifa and having guys show up and protect them. That's the first thing I ever heard about those guys. But they were saying in the Reuters article that they've been told not to bring guns, and the police chief or the mayor or whatever of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, said personal weapons will not be tolerated here in the capital of the United States of America, named after George Washington. Your Second Amendment right to defend yourself doesn't exist here. It doesn't exist. It's not there. Forget it. It's gone. And it's gone in New York City and other places too. It's just gone. We've just decided to suspend it. Yesterday, when all of this was piling in on me, and I just thought, my God, I cannot take any more of this. I think the feeling that I felt most profoundly was not even this sense of rage and injustice and a desire for revenge and justice, but I think the primary feeling I've had often from the time of this crime is a feeling of overwhelming, unshakable, profound shame. It's more than sadness. It's more than grief. It's more than anger. It's more than motivation. It's more than despair. It's more than anything. It's just plain shame. I am ashamed of myself that things got this bad. I am ashamed that we allow this to continue. I am ashamed that we didn't just simply storm the gates of Washington and I mean decades ago. I was talking with my wife about this. We were talking about prices of real estate in California and whether we were going to stay, and that subject's still up in the air. And I was talking about how the down payment on a home in California, in Los Angeles anyway, the down payment in order to get the mortgage is more than the house would cost anywhere else, essentially, and you get a better house too. We were talking about all this, and we were talking about property taxes, and she's kind of new to the country, and I'm not a big expert on these things anyway. So we were talking about, well, if you actually buy the house outright, it's not something we can do, but let's just say you could, then you wouldn't have to make payments on it anymore, right? Yes, except for the fact that you have to pay property taxes. And that dragged me back into something that somebody told me years ago, opened my eyes in a major way, and still causes me such anguish that I just don't know how to deal with it sometimes. And that person pointed out to me, and I mentioned this many times in my public speaking events. I'll go out and have a big crowd of people there, and I'll say, how many of you out there own your own homes? And people will raise their hand. Doesn't matter what percentage. Always somebody out there owns your own home. And I said, so just to clarify, you have paid your mortgage off, or you bought the house outright in cash, but you paid your mortgage off and you have title to the house, right? You have the title to the house. It's your property. Yes. And then I said what somebody had told me in one of these speaking events after hours, because I always try to be the last person out of the room. I learned so much after these speaking events from talking to you people. And this guy said to me, you don't own your home. That's not your home. What do you mean? Well, it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. I've got the title. Yes, but if you stop paying the property taxes on that house, then people are going to come and take it away from you. Sooner or later, guys with guns are going to show up and take your house away. You never own that house, ever. You rent it from the government, and you cannot ever pay it off. It will never belong to your children or your grandchildren or anything. They will have an entire future, just like you do right now, of renting your own property from the government forever. And whatever they decide to charge you for rent in terms of property taxes, raising them to whatever level they want to, you have no choice. You can't pick your house up and move it someplace else. And even though I find the idea of property tax to be at least one of the least disgusting ways of raising, you have to raise money for local government. Streets have to be paved. Schools have to be paid for. All of this, it has to happen one way or another. And this is probably less offensive to me than income tax and so on, but the idea of it, just the raw idea of it, this house is not mine. I put my entire life's work into it, or you put your entire life's work into your house. This is my home. This is my castle. This is where I live. It's my property. This is my little piece of America. No, it's not. It's not. It belongs to them. And if you don't pay the rent to them, then they're going to take it away from you. And I drove around last night. I just kept thinking to myself, my God, how did we get to this point? How did we let this happen? How? And this is why from the beginning I thought this idea of resistance was a term I was never going to use. This is the kind of thing that requires a revolution. Actually, to be honest with you, what it really requires is a counter-revolution. Because the American Revolution was an experiment in freedom, private property, limited government, all these things. And we've seen, well, it's a counter-revolution. We've watched all of these values and all of these ideas and philosophies and laws that have been so spectacularly effective just been destroyed right in front of our eyes, one by one. It's taken 50, 60 years to do it, and every little one of them was never enough for us to go out there and really show these people that it's time to fear the people and not the other way around, government, but we never did. And now I reach the point sometimes when I think we never did and we never will. That's not the position I'm taking here. That's not the way I think things are going to happen. I am just commiserating with all of you that there are times when I just am so filled with just raw shame of what we have allowed to happen that I don't know how to deal with it. And I just don't. I just don't. And I was telling my wife, I said, I have to find some way to cope with this, honey, because it's destroying me. It's eating me alive. This is not a political loss. Never felt this way about any other election in the history of this country. I've known that terrible things were happening. I watched the whole Obamacare, all of it. But that was different than this. That was different than this. And in this article that launched me yesterday, there was this hundreds of I don't know how many court cases, but they said in the article that repeated challenges, legal challenges brought by the Trump team, have been thrown out of court as baseless. And I hear that. That's factually the case, and that alone is enough to make me want to just rend my clothing and tear my hair out. I don't know why these were thrown out. I know in some cases they were thrown out by the people that perpetuated the fraud. So that doesn't particularly shock me. But I also have to wonder, given the amount of evidence that is out there, why no one has apparently made the case for the fraud. I suppose the Texas lawsuit was going to do that, but the Supreme Court decided what could the Supreme Court possibly have to do with determining the most contentious legal issue of our age? That's not their job. Their job is to rule on gender bathrooms and so on. So, look, I just figured that there are times to come in and be strong, and most of the time it's what I'm trying to do. And to be honest with you, I'm being strong right now because yesterday was unbearable. And today I'm here. And today I'm here. And today you're here too. Sometimes you just have to get it out. But this sense of shame, that's the thing I can't shake. I can't get rid of it. That just the sense that, you were given this priceless gift, and through whatever reason, you have allowed it to deteriorate to this degree. And I sometimes just don't know what I'm going to do. What's interesting about this too is that I've seen the left talk about Donald Trump, and I've seen them get apoplectic about it, and all of that is kind of personal. He's this, he's that, he's that. This is not on that level. That always struck me as kind of like, okay, you got to get it out. You got to get it out. That you don't like the guy, I get it, and he really ticks you off. I get that too. But this isn't that. They do Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all the red, Nancy Pelosi make me furious. But that's not what that's not what's unbearable. What's unbearable is the blatancy of this crime and this and all of the forces that are at work telling me that this didn't happen and that I need to get over it and that I must be crazy and all of it. And there are times when that social pressure gets to be so intense that you just really think, okay, I'm either going to do one of several things. I'm either going to just go walk off a bridge, or I'm going to head to the mountains and take beans and ammo with me and try and live out the rest of my days in relative freedom, or I'm going to move to some other country, or we're going to split up. And all these options, but none of it solves the problem of the shame of it. And I just hope to God I can harness this and not let this consume me, because there are times when I am so angry about this. I am so outraged at the criminality of it, at the brazenness of it, at the size of it, the depth of it. There are times when it is so monumental and so in front of everybody's face, and so many people saying, I don't know what the fuss is about, including a large number of so-called Republican legislators who need to be thrown out. As I said, I think it was yesterday, when that vote comes tomorrow, any Republican who voted to certify those votes needs to be removed from office in the primaries right away. Yesterday, I was listening to yet another analysis of just exactly how unusual, to say the very least, the night of November 3rd, 2020 was. This particular analysis wasn't one about vote counts or anything. Those I've seen 5 or 6 of, and I find them utterly compelling, and more to the point, I have not seen a single rebuttal of them, not one. I've seen them try to debunk it, but they never go after the issue. Remember the debunking at the, was it the Allstate Center in Georgia? Or State Farm? I always get those two mixed up. In any event, there are people pulling giant plastic tubs of ballots out from underneath tables where they've been hidden, and they had the audacity to say, no, that's been completely debunked. What happened was one of the shifts went home, and all the Republican observers in the press thought that was closing time for the night, so they all just kind of followed them out. But it's not our fault if they mistakenly thought that we had stopped counting for the night. You know, sometimes the best evidence is the weakness of the alibi. Have you ever thought about that? Sometimes the best evidence of the crime is the weakness of the defense. And it's yet another thing to drive you out of your living mind. It's just enough to drive you out of your living mind. They expect us to believe this. And when they tell you this so many times from so many places, and you hear it from your friends as well in social media and all the rest of it, you really do think you're being driven insane. This is the living definition of gaslighting. This is exactly what gaslighting is. And this might be worth a quick 3-minute diversion, simply because it's such a great story and a great little piece of information to know. I had only come across the term gaslighting 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, and somebody in show business happened to tell me about it. So for those of you not familiar with it, just so you understand where the term came from and why it's so appropriate to what we're seeing now. There was a movie made, I want to say in the 40s, virtually positive it was in the 40s, called Gaslight. And I'm almost positive it was Ingrid Bergman, but I'm not sure about that. But I do know the basics. And so in this story, a woman basically is widowed, and she lives in this house, and she has a maid and some kind of to be perfectly honest with you, I've never seen the movie, but I understand the dynamic. And as the movie continues, as it starts and goes on, little things start happening in the house, and all of a sudden dishes in the kitchen shatter. Somebody knocks over a dish and just tsh, and the woman says, what was that? And the maid says, what was what? The shattering sound I heard of the dishes. I didn't hear anything. No, of course. And they go into the kitchen and there's nothing there. And the entire purpose of the movie is to drive this woman insane. Because as we discover, spoiler alert, there is a significant amount of money hidden in the walls of this house, and they have to get her out of the house in order for the criminals to break open all the walls and find this cash. And and people like her trusted confidants and her house staff and all of the people around her, all of the people who she trusts, are constantly telling her that the things that she plainly saw and heard didn't happen. And she becomes utterly convinced that she's gone mad. And the only way that she finally realizes that this is going on is when a police detective is there. It's got, again, I didn't see it for the details, but basically when the criminals are in action, when they're about to do something, they turn on the gas in a separate room, and the gas lights dim. As they turn on another spigot of gas for a gas light, all of the burning lamps go down just for a second, and then the pressure comes back up again. And she says to the detective, "Do you see that?" He said, "Yes, of course I saw that." Well, this was something that had presaged all of these other things. So anyway, that's where the term comes from. It is an attempt to make you think you're insane by having everybody involved in this crime tell you that everything that you've seen, no, there was no voter fraud. It didn't happen. The stuff you saw, people actually pulling ballots out and counting them, nah. No. There's a perfectly good explanation for that. It was just the end of the shift, and people just kind of left and went home. Really? Yeah, and 5 states stopped counting all at the same time? Yeah, but that kind of stuff happens all the time. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. Happens all the time. And again and again and again, and you reach this point where you think you're just going to explode. And so I thought I would come on here today and just share this emotional outburst with you, because I have a strong suspicion that you've been going through some of these yourself. And the first thing, I think, really, even ahead of all of the plans and stratagems and all the rest of the things to deal with recovering what we've lost and getting ourselves some sense of justice here, I think all of it has to happen after we individually realize that we're not nuts. And so I thought it might be some good for me to come on here and tell you that if you're feeling these kind of feelings as I'm feeling all the time, you're not only not alone, and you're not only not insane. You are a person who has a profound sense of justice, and you have a profound sense of independent thought, and you are willing to look at evidence despite what people are telling you, and you can count, and you can add and multiply. You can look at evidence and weigh it against the counterclaims. You're an adult. You can see what actually happened. You can think for yourself, and you're not crazy. And yesterday was just, I don't know, maybe it just hit me the wrong way. Maybe it was just built up strain. Maybe it was a perfect storm of things that I'd read that day or whatever. But I really ended the day saying, honey, I don't know what I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't continue to treat her like this, for one thing, I haven't been a fun guy to be with, to be perfectly honest with you. For the last 8 weeks. And I'm very ashamed of that. I married the best person I ever met, and she understands where I'm coming from, and she feels it too, by the way. She is about as outraged as I am, because she's an American citizen, just happened to be born in Russia. She feels the same thing I do, the same anger I do, not quite as intensely, only because this kind of thing has been going on in Russia for certainly since the Bolshevik Revolution, and really that kind of corruption and autonomous power has been going on for the entire history of that country. But I'll tell you something, of all the things I have to put up with these days, and it's certainly not her fault, bless her, I love her so, but hearing that in Russia there is no property tax, and when the government gives you your home or whatever, it's yours. And that if you're gonna, in Russia, if you have corrupt officials, and they're all corrupt, they take their percentage, and then they pave the roads, and then they clean the roads, and you get free health care, and you get colleges, and all the rest of this stuff. Yes, of course you're paying for it. No, I don't think it's a good idea. It's all corruption, but if you're going to pay your 25% or whatever they take, then at least they deliver. What do we get here in California? How much of our income is taken here in California? 40%, 50% when you take federal taxes, all of the other taxes. And what do we get? We get the worst roads in the country. We get roads, according to my wife, who remarked on this on the way home from the airport when I first brought her to LAX. She said this 405 freeway is worse than the roads in Cairo, worse than the roads in Istanbul. And that is a bit of a shock for this American patriot to hear those kind of things and to know that she's right. The article or articles, whatever I glanced at, also happen to mention this is the biggest number of deaths, the deadliest week for COVID in America. 13,000 or something like that, 350,000 dead in America from COVID-19. And I hear this and I say, listen, I have two responses to that. First of all, I want to know how many people actually died of COVID-19, from COVID-19, not with COVID-19. I want to know what the actual numbers are. They're horrendous and there's no getting away from that, but I want to know what they really are, number one. And number two, I don't know why the entire country is not roaming the streets with blood in their eye at this biological attack that was launched against the United States by the Communist Party of China, and I'm going to back that kind of a statement up. Whether or not it got out of Wuhan's lab on purpose or not, or whether it came from nature or not, whatever the cause may be, it started in Wuhan, and the Chinese government shut down travel to the rest of China from Wuhan, but kept it open to the rest of the world. And to me, that is as good a definition as a biological weapon attack as I can come up with. And I look at all of these shuttered buildings and all of these closed things and all of these people enduring these incredible hardships and all of the suicides and all the rest of it. And I think, where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? The outrage is focused on Donald Trump. Donald Trump botched this. What about the people that are responsible for this? And I guess this is what I'll close my little rant with today. What about the people that are responsible for this? I am so thoroughly, disgustedly sick and tired of watching guilty people commit enormous crimes, and in this case we're talking about mass murder, in front of my eyes, and continue to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait for the wheels of justice to finally turn, but it never happens. So tomorrow we're going to find out whether there's a Kraken or not. And if the Kraken's not released tomorrow, then it's not going to be released. And that'll be another thing to carry with us from the last 8 weeks. All the times that we were told that this is going to happen. Hey, I'm not going to prejudice what's going to happen tomorrow. I hope I'm going to be very pleasantly surprised. But I have to tell you, having heard all of the things I've heard so far and all of the false hope that I've been given, I'm not particularly optimistic about it. I'd love to be wrong about this. You have no idea how much I'd love to be wrong about this. More than anything in the world, I would love to be wrong about this. I guess we'll find out by the end of the day, the next day. So we will see. We will see. But I just think that it's important sometimes to come out and say what we're all feeling. And that is that there are times when the injustice of this and the brazenness of it, the brazenness of Joe Biden saying, you know, whether you voted for me or not, I'm going to work to be your president. Whether you voted for me or not? How do you know who voted for you, Biden? There's no way to know who actually voted for you. This thing I saw yesterday basically was looking at historical trends that have been astonishing. For a small example, when Florida and North Carolina vote the same way, that combination of Florida and North Carolina voting together when they both vote Republican or both vote Democrat has determined the presidency 94% of the time since 1948. If you throw in a third state, Iowa, I think it was, then the numbers go up to 96%. And if you throw in 4 states, then it goes to 100%. But somebody took a look at these historical patterns. And when all 4 of those states vote the same way, Republican or Democrat, it is 100% accurate prediction of who's going to be president of the United States that election cycle. It has never failed. It's 100% accurate. Whoever carries those 4 states is the president of the United States without fail through every single election cycle. So whoever carries these 4 states is the president of the United States. And guess who carried all 4 of them? You'll be shocked to know that it was Donald Trump who carried all 4 of these states. The first time in history that somebody has carried all 4 of those states and then not won the election. There have been some people saying that maybe the show's a little long, and they may be right. I don't know what the ideal length of this is. I'm trying to kind of find the podcast time. But I think at 45 minutes, I've heard some people say and get a little redundant. Probably right. That's certainly a habit I have. So I think we're going to try a 30-minute show and see how that feels and how it fits. So I think that'll do it for this one. Sometimes you do just have to come out and vent with your friends. You got to go out to the bar and have a beer and just say these bastard Florida State Seminoles, I can't take it anymore. Or whatever your particular case may be. And we're not allowed to go out and have drinks at the bar with our friends anymore, because that would encourage civil unrest. And that would encourage people, most importantly, to share their actual opinions with each other, and then the gaslighting power gets a lot weaker. So that's one of the reasons why we're being kept away from each other, is because they don't want us sitting down in groups at Thanksgiving or Christmas talking about this, because if we do, we're going to find out that no, there are other people in the family, other people that we respect and know and love, who feel the same way we do, and that's bad for them. So this is an icebreaker to the degree that it is. It's an emotional rant filled with no essential information except for the stuff I mentioned about these bellwether states and so on. But sometimes just the acknowledgement that you're right to be angry. You are correct to being angry. This isn't hate speech. This isn't sore losership. This isn't cult of Trump worship. It's none of these things. It is the burning sense of injustice that people with a moral core feel when an enormous crime has been committed against them, and the perpetrators not only are not punished, but they're actually celebrated, elevated, and they have to stand in front of you every day. It is like holding a man's coat while he molests your child. You're expected to stand there and go along with it while they talk about the Constitution and all of these other things that they are determined to destroy. And there are times when I simply can't take it anymore. And then I do. Then I get up again and we go back to work. So today may not have been your day to have reached that point, and maybe you're made out of sterner stuff than I am, and you've never been in that exact state of unbearability. But I bet you most of you have, and that's one of the reasons why we're here. We just need a place to vent, and we need people to tell us, okay, you get that out of your system. I think I probably did. It was an intense half hour. But I think I got most of that out of my system. Now I'm ready to get down to work and start to figure out how to beat these people, how to defeat them, how to destroy them, how to bring justice back to this country, and that means justice back to the world. So help me God, I am not going to rest ever until I am either dead from the effort or these people are brought to justice, one way or another. That's how it's going to go for me. And I'll bet there's a lot of you out there who feel the exact same way. That'll do it for this edition of Moving Back to America. We will see you tomorrow, Wednesday, the 6th of January. And then we will see whether or not a Kraken has been released. And then on the 7th, we'll talk about the Kraken, because there is a Kraken one way or another. And in 2 days, we'll know. I dearly hope I'm wrong. In any event, we'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, right here on Moving Back to America. This show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com and by the large numbers of individuals who made a one-time donation. And they think that these messages are important. I think they're important too. If you think they're important, then we could use your help on Team Freedom here. There's a link right below in the comment section below this video. We'll see you Wednesday.